Hello everyone. Today I would like to talk about a little bit of a perspective, and we'll talk about the shade and shadow based on what you learned so far. We would like to just use that what you have learned and then move forward. This is the basically a little side note. This is the box that I put always my art supply in here. For today's work I would use a felt tip pen. There is no need to use all these markers yet, or pencil, whatever. I may probably get a pencil. It's always good to have one handy. Sorry about that. And this is just to show you how I operate. It's always good to put your stuff in the same place, and then I'm gonna put them aside. Let's just start with our conversation today about the perspective and shade and shadow. I would like to use this exercise we provided you on Moodle on week 3 as a base to explain everything on that. However, I may need to step back a bit and then teach a little bit more fundamental topics to you, and then we'll move forward to doing that elevation together. What is that? Is let's take a look at a piece of landscaping here. Okay, so here is my setting. Hope you are seeing it well. Okay. Let's just start with this. Here we are having a piece of a stone like that sitting in a landscape, and then I'm gonna add a little bit of shrubs in here and there in the background, and this is what we see. Always allow a light into your scene. So here what I am drawing is a elevation. Okay, I'm using 0.3 just to give myself a little bit more depth. I change it to 0.5 and then draw a bunch of other lines to see a bit of texture and depth into what I want to draw, right? What I would like to do, just back to 0.3, show a little bit of a shadow in here. Obviously the lights is coming from top right. Normally the right-handed people like to do it from top right. Left-handed people doing it from top left. Leonardo da Vinci, as you know, was a very famous Italian artist and scientist. He was a left-handed, so you can go back and see his artwork. It's amazing. Doesn't really matter you're right-handed or left-handed in this exercise. It just it's a preference, right? So my preference is to get the light from here, normally 45-degree, right? So here is a 45-degree, and everything here is going to be a little bit darker, even though those shrubs are there, but some of them they are closer, some of them they are further back. So here we are with this. I'm gonna add a bunch of sodded and grass in here, see if it works. Okay, that's not too bad. I mean, it's better than what it was in the first place, with no shade and shadow and no texture. I'm going to have a couple of lines with 0.7 to make this even darker. How is that? Okay, same concept. Let's take a look at it from above. So these stuff that I drew here, they need to be seen in a plan view. I'm gonna just push this a bit up so you are seeing it better in the picture. Here is the stone coming down. Here is that piece of a stone, right? I was in here, so here is this, here is this, so, and then around it these are the shrubs. Okay, so let's take a look at them, see how they are going to look like. Okay, like this. Now the light is coming from 45-degree, but we can see it in a plan view. So here is the top view, and the light's coming from this way. Here it is. Showing the light is coming from top right, and maybe bunch of shrubs covering this piece of a stone up here. There is a little bit of a shadow going away from this piece of a stone, and then it may cover a bunch of those shrubs underneath here, so they may become a little bit look darker. And effect of that light is changing the atmosphere around this piece like that, and then adding a bunch of dots. Here they are. And then if you like to make those shrubs a little bit look more plant, because we see them in a plan view, with the use of those tricks you learn in the texture exercise, you may as well do it. Right? This is how we correlate between the elevation and a top view on showing a light coming from one direction. That's a really fundamental learning into this exercise. So stay with me, we will go to the next piece together. In the continuation of this concept, let me teach you one more thing here. As a piece of landscape, it's always helping us to make a drawing look better, is a tree. So let me just quickly sketch a tree and then show you how to implement the shade and shadow into that tree. Take a look. Here is a tree, so it comes up. At the bottom, it's a little bit chubbier, and it goes up, it becomes thinner, and then we take those branches off of that tree like that, right? Then you are going to add a bunch of texture to show the leaves attached to that tree, right? This is normally I do that with 0.3 and then I start using 0.5 just by showing darker side of this tree. So remember, we've been talking about having 45-degree light coming into our object. This is exactly the same. So imagine a light comes from top 45 degree, therefore underneath of that branch is become a little bit darker. You need to have an imagination of seeing things and then at the same time implementing the shade side and the light side. I would like to use 0.7 also in order to make this side a little bit darker. That is going to the ground, maybe a bunch of shrubs and sodded area, and then connection to the ground is really important. Never leave them as empty. You may use a darker branches as it goes into the tree, and then down here using 0.7 makes this a little bit more affected by the light coming from top right. So using a little bit darker and bolder felt tip pen helps me to do that. If you feel this is too much, there is a need of a branch to hold on to them. Here we are. This is the branch holding up to that bunch of leaves over there. Okay, so this is how we make this tree look a little bit more realistic. If you want to close the top portion, that's alright. So give it a 0.3, not too dark because it's right in front of the light is coming. Do not make them continuous, so leave bunch of spaces in between. If you make them completely closed, that would not be look really realistic. And then bunch of shade and shadow underneath in here, because this the shape of those leaves has its own volume, right? So this is like that. In a simple side of this story, if I make this explanation, you may better have a better understanding of what we are doing here. This is a cylindrical shape. So here is the cylinder. Cylinder is a round shape and it goes up. So darker in the right side, left side, and then lighter in the right side. Here is a bunch of spheres that's making this tree, and those are branches, right? So looking into spheres, here is the darker side, here is the darker side, as you can see it, and then here is underneath, so completely dark. Here is the light, here is, as we come down here, these are all become dark, right? So using the same typical concept as we discussed it in here, it applies to that tree. Yet what I am using here is a little bit of a texture. So feel free to use a different pens with the different thicknesses, and do not connect the lines, because this is not a one object to become a solid like potato. This is not potato, this is a bunch of trees, and we are showing these textures in order to finalize the shape of that tree and moving forward. Okay, hope that makes sense. This is the first lesson about the texture combined with the shade and shadow, and we'll move forward to the next video talking about the perspective. Hope that helps you to do a better work in your assignment. Okay, another lesson about the trees. You know how to do the trees in elevation. So here is the elevation. That's how we discuss it in a very smaller scale. And then the light is coming from top, and here it is. So the light is coming like 45 degrees, and here we are having the shade of that tree falling on the ground, right? So let's take a look at it on the ground. I'm going to project this tree. Here is that tree. That is the size of the tree. Has to be in between these two lines. That's the center for that tree. Maybe you will start to adding a bunch of textures to make it look like a tree. Maybe a bunch of branches. Okay. Now let me add a shade to it. What we can do here is this come down. Here is the top of it, and here is the bottom portion of it, 45 degrees coming down here. So that piece is the shade for that tree, right? But this is not a common way of doing it. We need to see that 45 on our elevation, and at the same time in a top view we see another 45 degree like that. So we would not use this shadow like this. What we would use to make this drawing look better is this. So here is the shadow going 45 degree away from that object. Yet this light is too low in this side to show the shadow goes all the way and not connected to the tree. That's not the way we show it in our site plan when we do the render. How we show it, just use this theory. Here is the tree, so I'm going to draw another one, just a very simple tree in here, and then below that here's the tree in the plan view. It should be the same size as we discussed it over there, and then the shadow for this, it's going to grow like that, right? So this is the shadow we normally put into our work like this, and then make it look much better. So it starts to showing a 3D version of itself, and you can see it just coming out from the piece of paper. This is how it works. And then the elevation, we'll be having bunch of darknesses in here, maybe a little bit too dark in there, and then we use this theory to make sure our landscape and our elevations are having a proper lighting and showing the proper depth into our drawing. So here is going to be a little bit darker, as you can imagine, right? This is how it works. And then bunch of branches and add textures, and this become a real tree. Okay, so another way of looking into that is making a little bit darker lines with the use of bolder pens at this area to have a true contrast, and then make the tree just distinct from the background shade and shadow. Okay, so let's go to the perspective now. Okay, here what we were calling it the elevation. Now I want to work on this elevation based on what we discussed on the shade and shadow, and I'll teach you the perspective using this elevation. Okay, in order to draw a perspective for a elevation render, how we do that? You need to establish a horizontal line. Horizontal line is the line passes through an observer at the same height of normal people that looking into this building. So imagine a person standing right there with a proper scale looking into this building. So I would use this as my sample, and this is the real person. The first one I drew wasn't as good as. Here is the height for this guy. What I would like to do is just going through this and then showing a line as my horizontal line, and then set the center of this door at this height as my vanishing point. What is the benefit of having a vanishing point? It makes the front portion, the first plan of the elevation, look more real. How we do that? What we are going to do is just showing a little bit of a sidewalk in each side of this house. And then this is the line coming perpendicular to this. I'll keep that. And then if I open a sidewalk like this size, just eyeball it, maybe a little bit wider, like that. Just equal each side, so the distance from this point to that line is equal to the distance of that point to this line, and then connect it to that vanishing point. That line comes down here and then continue on. That line goes there and then continue on. Here they are. So I built a front landscape for this house, and here is how we walk into this house. All the personage or the human figures we will use to show in this rendering, they should have their head into that line. So here is the human body, here is where they stand, and here is the head. Okay, and then if I want to add any trees or something right in front of this building, I would be able to draw that up here first, as I showed you in the previous exercise. Right here is the tree goes up. We would not abstract the building as much, because the building is the main thing we want to show, and all this entourage are the stuff that we add to this to make this building look more valuable. We are not trying to promote the trees only, but also trees are going to help the building, so the building shines itself, and people seeing it and your client be happy, and the contractors understand what you are imagining. And during the design process, this is the language you talk to your team, and all this good stuff happens when you decorate your design with a entourage. So here we are using a different landscape now. You can add some shade and shadow into this. You will start to adding some shade and shadow to the building. So all the light is coming, as we mentioned, from top right, and here is the frame making a shadow onto the glasses, right? And you would be able to start to adding a little bit of a shingles here. Don't afraid if your lines are kind of trembling, that makes it look even better. That's how normally we do that, to show a squeaky line for the shingles up top of the roof, and then adding some vertical lines in order to mimic those shingles connections. Okay, and then we finish the work. I will finish this and then we wrap up our conversation. What you need to remember is when the light is coming, all this overhang right in front of the building needs to create a shade and shadow. So on the side of the overhang, I'm going to show a little bit more darker areas like that. Okay, bear with me. Okay, so hopefully I didn't want to just sitting and watching me. This is almost finished. I have done everything by 0.3. Now I'm using this felt tip pen. This is the fine liner, the Sharpie. I would darken the area that I want to have those areas under the shade and shadow and make them a little bit darker. That's how we can save time and then make this a little bit darker. As you can see, the tree is not obstructing the building as much. We already made the glasses in this exercise. This is the person standing right here. Maybe there is a little bit of a shadow into here, there is a shadow into there. We can add some shrubs in there, adding a shadow in here for that piece of a stone. And let's finish this by adding a little bit of a lifts and here, making it look more real. And then, as I mentioned in the past, it would be nice to kind of having a bunch of lines to show the sky in the background, and maybe a bunch of lines here, as we always put something to show a depth into back of our building. This is how we make a 2D elevation look like a 3D elevation, and I want you to kind of use these perspective rules I taught you today in this video, and the shade and shadow, and this basically textures, to bring this to a conclusion and having a more realistic view for your client and the team that you're working with. Thank you very much for watching this video. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have fun. Bye now.